The wrong passenger. Here's what nobody tells you about rest stops at night. They're not rest stops. They're traps waiting for the right person to pull in. It was the second week of June. Early summer heat already settling across Tennessee like a wool blanket soaked in humidity. Marcus had been behind the wheel for going on 6 hours, the dashboard air conditioning cutting out somewhere past the Kentucky border, and his 10-year-old son Jake sitting quietly in the back seat. Too quietly for a kid who'd been fired up about the trip just that morning. The drive down to visit Marcus's aunt in Cookeville was supposed to be a good one. A chance to reset, spend time with family, get out of the city. But somewhere around hour 4, something shifted in the car. Not between Marcus and his aunt or anyone else. Between Marcus and Jake. Something personal. The kind of slow-building friction that doesn't start with a single argument, but with a dozen small things stacking on top of each other until the silence becomes its own kind of pressure. By the time the sun dropped below the tree line and the sky went that bruised purple color, it gets right before full dark, they'd stopped talking altogether. It was close to 9:30 when Jake's voice broke the silence from the back seat. "Dad, I need to use the bathroom." Marcus exhaled through his nose. He didn't say anything for a moment, just watched the highway lights start to blur past them in the dusk. Then Jake said it again, more urgently, and Marcus gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "There's a rest stop coming up. Hold it." They rode in silence again. A few minutes later, a blue sign flashed past. Tennessee Rest Area, 1 mile. And Marcus took the exit without a word. The rest area was one of the small ones. A squat brick building with 2 restrooms, a row of vending machines humming under a yellow light, 3 or 4 concrete picnic tables that looked like they hadn't been cleaned since the previous administration. The parking lot was almost empty. A couple of 18-wheelers sat idling on the far end, and closer to the building, a large white pickup truck was parked with its engine running, cab dark. Marcus pulled into a spot near the building and put it in park, but left the engine running. Jake threw open the door before Marcus had even fully stopped and jogged toward the men's room without looking back. Marcus sat there, watching the yellow glow of the vending machines, listening to the highway noise from the overpass above them. The air coming through the window was thick and still smelled like asphalt from the day's heat. He thought about what he was going to say to Jake on the rest of the drive. Nothing came to him. So he just sat. About a minute and a half later, he heard the back door open, the familiar creak of it, the soft thud of it closing again. Marcus almost said something. Jake's name was right there at the front of his mouth, but the argument was still sitting between them, and he let the moment pass. He put the car in drive and pulled out of the spot. In his rearview mirror, he caught the white pickup truck pulling out at the same time. He didn't think anything of it. People leave rest stops. That's what they do. He swung back toward the on-ramp, merged onto the interstate, and moved into the left lane to pick up speed after the slow crawl of the service road. The pickup came up behind him. Marcus noticed it and eased off the gas slightly. Gave it room to pass. It didn't pass. It matched his speed exactly. Then the headlights started flashing, once, twice, 3 times, bright and deliberate, not like someone trying to signal that their brights were on by mistake. Marcus moved to the right lane. The pickup moved with him. The lights kept flashing. His first thought was road rage. Some guy who thought Marcus had cut him off or something. He'd dealt with that before. Most drivers in Tennessee were decent, but you always got a few. He slowed down, moved toward the shoulder, thinking the guy would just blow past him and be done with it. Instead, the pickup pulled alongside him, matched his speed, and the passenger side window came down. Marcus lowered his own window halfway. The man behind the wheel was older, white hair, weathered face, maybe mid-60s, and he was leaning across the cab, pointing at Marcus's car and shouting something over the wind and road noise. Marcus couldn't make out a word of it. The man pointed. Again, more insistently now, jabbing his finger toward the rear of Marcus's car, and then making a pulling over gesture with his whole hand. Marcus's stomach tightened. He didn't know this man. He didn't know what was going on. In his head, he ran through the calculations fast. If this was something, if this guy was something, Marcus had his foot right there on the gas. He told himself he'd floor it the second anything felt wrong. But something in the old man's face stopped him. It wasn't anger. It wasn't the look of someone who wanted to start something. It was urgency. Desperation almost. Marcus pulled to the shoulder. Gravel crunched under the tires. The pickup stopped just behind him, and the old man got out at a near jog, moving faster than someone his age probably should have been moving. Marcus kept his hand near the gear shift. The man reached his window and set it straight out. No preamble? That's not your kid. Marcus stared at him. What? The person who got in your back seat at the rest stop. The man was breathing hard, pointing at the rear of Marcus's car. That is not your son. The back right door opened. Marcus turned his head just as a figure climbed out, tall, adult-sized, moving fast, and disappeared into the tree line on the side of the interstate. Gone in seconds. No face, no voice, just the crunch of brush and then silence. The world went very still for a moment. Then it hit him all at once. Jake. Jake was still at the rest stop. Marcus thanked the old man in a voice he didn't fully recognize as his own, pulled a sharp U-turn across the grass median between the interstate lanes, something he'd never done before in his life and hoped never to do again, and flew back toward the rest area. The white pickup followed right behind him. They made it back in under a minute. And there was Jake, standing just outside the men's room door, arms crossed, looking annoyed in the way that only a 10-year-old waiting for a ride can look annoyed. He hadn't even realized anything had happened. Marcus got out of the car, crossed the parking lot in 5 steps, and hugged his son harder than he'd hugged him in a long time. Jake made a noise of protest. "Dad, what are you doing?" But he let it happen. The old man from the pickup came over. His name was Dale, he said. He'd been parked at the rest stop, taking a break from the drive. He'd seen the figure get into Marcus's car, not running, not obviously fleeing, just slipping in quickly and quietly while Marcus had been facing forward. And something about it had looked wrong to him from the start. He'd followed to make sure. Marcus thanked him 3 times. Jake listened to the explanation with wide eyes, then spent the next 2 hours of the drive asking questions about what the person might have wanted, building up increasingly elaborate theories. The cold silence from before the rest stop never came back. Marcus still thinks about what would have happened if Jake had taken another 30 seconds, if the door had opened a minute later, if Dale hadn't been parked where he was, paying attention to what most people would have ignored. He never saw the face of whoever got into his car. He's decided somewhere along the way that he's okay with that. She asked for a ride. There are 2 kinds of wrong, the kind you can walk back from and the kind that follows you home. That night, somewhere between Nevada and Arizona, we nearly drove headfirst into the second kind. The trip out to Nevada had been fine, easy even. Nate and his fiancée Amber had left their apartment in Phoenix at 6 in the morning and made it to the hotel by mid-evening, checked in, had dinner, slept well. The kind of road trip that makes you feel good about road trips in general. The drive back was a different story, and it started with the timing. They'd pushed the checkout late and didn't get on the road until just past noon. By the time they were deep into the desert stretch of the return route, it was well after dark, Not the comfortable early evening kind of dark where you can still see the shapes of mountains against the sky, but the fully closed-in kind, where your headlights make a little tunnel and everything else is just black. The drive each way was around 10 hours, not counting stops. They'd pulled off for fast food after about 3 hours going out. But on the way back, they waited longer, partly because there was less to choose from on that stretch of highway, partly because Nate just wanted to get home. It was close to 12:30 in the morning when he finally caved and took an exit near a small highway town, followed the signs to a fast food place on the edge of a strip mall. They ordered, got back on the freeway in under 15 minutes. Nate ate while he drove. Amber gave him the look she always gave when he did that. Not angry, just resigned in the specific way of someone who's had that exact conversation many times before. Maybe 20 minutes after getting back on the highway, the sky opened up. It wasn't a gradual build. One moment it was dry desert air. The next there was rain coming down, hard enough to blur the lane markings. Amber told him to pull over. He resisted for about 30 seconds before a gust of wind shook the car enough that he admitted she was right. He pulled to the side of the highway and killed the headlights. It quickly became a downpour, the kind that makes the inside of a car feel like being in a car wash. Rain drummed on the roof, ran down the windshield in solid sheets, and the sound of it was loud enough that they had to half raise their voices to talk. They sat there for a while, Nate finishing his food, both of them watching the storm. Then there was a sound at the window. Not the rain, not the wind. A hard, flat knock. Nate looked left and saw a figure standing outside his door. Not a silhouette exactly, because the rain made everything blurry, but a shape, pressed close against the glass. Amber screamed before Nate had fully processed what he was seeing, and his heart lurched up into his throat. He didn't roll the window down. He cracked the door an inch and yelled over the rain, "What do you need?" The figure was a woman. She was completely soaked through, hair matted flat against her face, wearing a light jacket that was doing absolutely nothing against the weather. She looked maybe 40, maybe younger. It was hard to tell. Her expression was hard to read. Scared maybe, or something that looked like scared. "I need a ride," she said. "Please." Nate sat for a second. The rain was hammering the door. The nearest town was miles back. He looked at Amber, who looked back at him with an expression that was not quite alarmed, but not quite calm either. "Get in the back," he said to the woman. She got in, brought half the storm with her. Water spread across the seat immediately, and she pulled the door shut and sat there dripping. Amber's eyes met Nate's in the rearview mirror for a moment, and then she looked forward. "Where are you headed?" Nate asked. Silence. He watched the road for a moment, then tried again, thinking maybe she hadn't heard him over the rain. "Ma'am, where are you going? We can drop you at the next town." He glanced in the rearview mirror. She was looking directly at him, not at the back of his head, at his eyes in the mirror. Her expression was completely flat, not upset, not grateful, not cold exactly, just blank. The kind of blank that sits differently in a car at 12:30 in the morning than it would in daylight. Amber shifted in her seat. Nate heard it. "We're going to drop you at the next town we come to," he said, louder, making it less of a question this time. He said it to both of them. Amber needed to hear it as much as the woman did. The woman shrugged, said nothing. Nate merged back onto the highway. The rain was still heavy but manageable. He set the cruise at 60 and focused on the road, watching the white lines appear one by one out of the dark ahead of them. 3 minutes passed, maybe 4. Amber had gone quiet in a way that Nate recognized as her being very alert. Then, from directly behind him came a sound that he still can't fully describe. a high, wavering shriek that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal human range, the kind of sound that makes your nervous system respond before your brain catches up. At the same time, two arms came around the headrest and closed around his throat. The car swerved immediately, not from a choice Nate made, but from his body reacting, his hands pulling the wheel without meaning to. He hit the brakes. The rear of the car fishtailed slightly on the wet road. He was fighting to breathe, hands coming up to pull at the arms around his neck, trying to keep his eyes on the road at the same time. Amber moved without hesitating. She turned in her seat and raked her nails across the woman's face, hard, with intention, and the shrieking shifted registers, moving from that deranged high pitch into something raw, more pained. The arms went slack. Nate pulled them away and got the car straight on the road. He pulled to the shoulder again, barely noticing he'd done it, and got out of the car in the rain. He opened the back door, grabbed the woman by the arm, and pulled her out. She was doubled over, hands covering her face, making a continuous low sound. He didn't ask questions. He let go of her arm, stepped back, got in the car, and locked it. As he put it in drive, the banging started on the rear window, and that sound came back, the shrieking, though muffled now through the glass, and Nate accelerated onto the highway and drove. Within 30 seconds, the figure was behind them and gone. Amber was already on the phone with Highway Patrol before he'd fully merged. She gave their approximate location, described the woman, described the section of highway. The dispatcher took it all down carefully, said a unit would patrol the area. They didn't stop again that night. Not for gas, not for anything. They drove the remaining hours straight through and pulled into their apartment complex in Phoenix as the sky was starting to go gray at the edges. Neither of them had said much on the rest of the drive. There wasn't much to say that the other one didn't already know. Nate still thinks about the moment he told her to get in. The rain, the dark, the empty highway. He thinks sometimes about what the right call was. He still doesn't have a clean answer. He thinks he'd do it again, help someone stranded in a storm. But he'd do it differently. He just hasn't quite worked out how. The spike trap. There's a moment on a dark road at midnight when you realize the road you're on isn't a road anymore. It's a kill box. And someone built it just for you. Ryan had done the Texas to Louisiana run before, so 14 hours didn't scare him. What he hadn't counted on was how tired 14 hours actually felt from the inside, especially when you're trying to power through it in one shot. He left his house in San Antonio at 10 in the morning in his Ford F-150, which sat high off the ground and had a light bar across the roof that could turn a pitch-black country road into something readable. Good for hunting. Better, it turned out, for what happened that night. He made one stop around noon, a deli outside of Beaumont, where he ate a sandwich at a table by the window and watched the highway traffic. Then another stop at a rest area around mid-afternoon for the cooler packed in the truck bed. After that, his plan was straight through to his cousin's place in the Louisiana countryside. No more stopping except for gas. Gas stop number 2 came at 11:30 when he was running low and the GPS said he had about 45 minutes left. He filled up at a truck stop off the highway, didn't bother going inside. He'd had enough coffee and he just wanted to be done. The GPS routed him back out and picked up where it left off. That was when things started to feel different. The highway gave way to state roads. The state roads gave way to 2-lane county routes. And then the GPS, which had seemed perfectly confident up to this point, started putting him down a series of roads that Ryan didn't recognize and couldn't quite account for. Not wrong exactly, just odd. The kind of routing that makes you look twice at the screen. He was tired. He knew he was too tired to be driving. His eyelids had that sand behind them feeling, and his peripheral vision was doing that thing where it goes slightly soft at the edges. But his cousin's house was close enough that stopping felt worse than pushing through. The road he was on now was a two-laner with a 45 miles per hour limit, and nothing on either side but pine trees and dark. No houses, no driveways, no lights except what the truck made. He was doing about 55, maybe 60, because at that hour on that kind of road, you don't worry about traffic. His light bar lit up the road a good distance ahead, which is the only reason he saw them in time. 4 reflective orange cylinders set in a rough line across both lanes. Traffic drums, the kind of big barrel-shaped things you see around construction zones. Ryan registered them at about the same moment he registered that they were in the middle of a road with no construction zone, no workers, no warning signs, and no reason to be there. He hit the brakes hard. The truck shuddered and slowed, tires gripping well enough on the dry pavement, and he came to a stop about 6 feet in front of them. He sat there for a moment with the engine idling, trying to make sense of it. Construction runoff? Storm debris? Some county thing. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept tucked between the seat and the door. Not because he'd made a decision, but because his hand just went there. And got out. The night was completely quiet except for the engine ticking, and something in the trees, insects, frogs, the normal wet night sounds of Louisiana. He walked up to the drums slowly, bat at his side, and looked behind them. A spike strip, laid across the road behind the drums like it was waiting. The kind law enforcement uses. Flat, dark, easy to miss at speed. If he'd gone through the drums, or around them, the tires would have been done in seconds. Ryan stood there in the headlights of his own truck, looking at the strip, and he felt the situation land on him all at once. Not construction, not county. Someone put this here. Someone wanted a car to be stopped right here, on this road, at this hour. He started scanning the tree line. From the woods on the left side of the road, a voice came. Male, not close, not far. Help! Somebody help me! Ryan did not move toward the sound. He stood where he was and called out, "What's wrong?" No answer. He took a few steps toward the edge of the road and looked into the trees. His light bar didn't reach the woods directly, but it threw enough ambient light that shapes were visible. Trunks, undergrowth, the uneven ground of the forest floor. And in that ambient light, in the corner of his peripheral vision, he saw something that he processed first as a large animal crouching in the brush. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. Someone crouched behind a pair of pine saplings about 20 feet into the tree line, very still, watching him. Ryan turned and walked back to his truck, not quickly, not slowly, even deliberate. He got in, put the truck in 4-wheel drive, and eased it off the road onto the grass shoulder. The ground was firm enough. He kept the wheels clear of where the spike strip extended toward the edge of the road, threading the truck between the last drum and the tree line, and pulled past. He watched the rearview mirror as he did. At first, nothing. Then the figures emerged from the trees. 3 of them, coming out onto the road, standing in the wash of his taillights. They stood in the road and watched him go. His taillights swept past them, and then they were gone, swallowed back into the dark. He didn't stop until he reached his cousin's house, pulled into the gravel driveway, sat for a moment with the engine running and both hands on the wheel. Then he went inside. He's thought about the logistics of it since then, how long it would have taken to set up, who was involved, whether they'd done it before. He's thought about what would have happened if the tires had gone, stranded on a back road at midnight with no signal and no traffic. Doors locked while figures walked out of the tree line toward a crippled truck. He's glad he had the light bar. He's glad he was too tired to be fully alert, because a more alert version of him might have gotten out to investigate the voice instead of walking back to the truck. And he is very, very glad he bought the truck with the high clearance.